Welcome to the Spinning Back Clique, where each week here at MMA Junkie, we take a look through the biggest sports headlines, a spin, if you will. And of course, we got Goze from MMA Junkie Radio, and I'm going to chime in and I'm going to be a dual threat as host and also co-host. I'm Gorgeous George, also from MMA Junkie Radio. Here we go, Goze. You know where I'm headed with this. The past week, we had the biggest headline in the sport, and of course, everything happening outside of the octagon because we have basically no fight game going on. Jon Jones got arrested, Goze, as a result of a alleged DWI, and he also had a handgun. So this guy is in a lot of trouble, all right? Now, what brought the cops also, summoned them, Goze, to where they found him, was hearing a gunshot. Now, remember, all the information is still coming out, but Goze, where does Jon Jones go from here?
Well, it's a very difficult situation that he's in. Where he goes from here is a decision that has to be made with zero influence from MMA or the UFC. These are decisions that have to be made with him in mind right now. This is a fight that he's entering for his soul, for his life. And you don't have to take in consideration when my next title defense is going to be, when my next fight is going to be. All that needs to be put away so that Jon Jones can fix himself, because this is just something that keeps reoccurring in his life, and it's setting him back, not just in his career, but in his personal life. So really what Jon needs to do is, if this means you got to get away from the sport and go into a rehab or whatever it is, you just have to change your strategy. The same way you would in a fight. If you suffered a loss, you go back and you change the strategy, because what's been happening hasn't been working well for Jon. Jon needs to do things differently. And if that means that he's got to get rid of coaches, teammates, friends, family members, whatever that is, he has to do it, because this has got to be his last shot here. We heard last time he went in front of the judge was very clear. If you come back in front of me again, things are not going to go well. And Jon is at that point right now. So he has to look at his surroundings. He has to change all that. And he really has to do it without the influence of MMA or the UFC.
All right, Goze. Now you're a psych major. You remember the id and the super ego?
Yep.
In my opinion, he's just got to flick off the id, because that's the one that gets him in trouble. Whoever it is that says, you know what, I'm going to unwind and have a drink tonight and chill out a little bit during this quarantine, that's the guy that he's got to get rid of, that id, because that's where all the trouble starts, Look, it was 2 times the limit of New Mexico, which is similar to California and most states, of 0.08. He was found at 0.16, so he was pretty, inebriated. And then you could just see that the way, the body cam footage that they showed immediately as reality was starting to set in. You could just see Jon, the good guy, the super ego, the guy that was raised by a preacher and has his kids that he loves and does good things, does PSAs for the sport and telling people to stay home because of COVID-19. That Jon Jones, man, he started to come out. He started getting emotional. But you're right, Goze. It looks like it's too late at this point. I think Jon Jones may be in the kind of trouble where he's going to be behind bars for 6-9 months. I mean, I'm sure, the well-paid attorneys can take you down from having to do years to months. But I'm thinking it could be the worst for Jon Jones, man. He's really in some trouble. This is just happening repeatedly. And like you said, the judge gave him a stern warning. All right, our 3 minutes is up. Let's go to the next topic. Of course, Goze, if Jon Jones, in fact, does have to step away from the sport for whatever reason, be it the UFC initiating it or him on his own, what happens to the UFC light heavyweight title? Right away, you could see Jan Blachowicz and Dominic Reyes, they were coming out. A lot of fighters are clowning. Some were coming out in support, but those 2 in particular. And let's throw in Thiago Santos as well. What do you do with those 3, Goze? I'm giving you the role of matchmaker here. 2 minutes, decide who would fight for that vacant title.
I think when you have a situation like we have right now, it's almost like a different era of the sport again. Things aren't changing month to month or even week to week. They're changing day to day. And what's happening is the UFC needs to put together cards, make money off of their pay-per-views so that they can make those big payments that they got to make. And so if you're going to do these type of things, they have to think things over differently as well and be in a different mindset. Right now, I guarantee you, they're going to be looking for things that pop. Okay. So get away from the rankings. They mean nothing right now. Get away from who deserves what, who's owed what. None of that means anything. The way the UFC is going to put together fights going forward, I think, is just the most pop they can get. And I think the best way to get pop in this situation is sell the fight as who are the two guys who almost beat John Jones here in the last couple of years. You got to go with Reyes and you got to go with Santos. Match those two up against each other. Both of them are chirping. They both want it. There's a history in the sense that some people thought they won that fight. Set it up like that, and I bet you it'll have a lot of pop.
All right. Well, you didn't leave me too much here with the 2 minutes, but I'm going to make my point simple. Those guys had a crack at John Jones. What about Jan Blachowicz? He went out there. He's got a streak going on, and John Jones was front row. John Jones wanted a piece of that after Blachowicz eliminated Corey Anderson. Why not Jan Blachowicz? Let me throw it back at you. We still got some time.
Because there's no pop. It's not a sexy matchup, and that's not what they're trying to do. They're going to come back, and they want to smack you in the mouth. They want everybody to get right back into MMA, right back into paying for pay-per-views. That's kind of why we didn't see Corey Anderson. Just there wasn't that sort of pop to it, and that's what they need right now. So I don't think that's the matchup they're going to go with.
All right, fair enough. Either way, we can be convinced of one thing, man. All three of those fighters have put themselves in a position to compete for a vacant title. But first things first, let's see what happens with John Jones and, of course, the UFC. Lots of moving parts there. Let's go on to the next topic. This is GG throwing an audible. UFC 249 has too many moving parts, folks. All right? But as of this taping, it appears Khabib Nurmagomedov, if the card were to still go forward, which it sounds like it, okay, according to UFC President Dana White, this card is going forward. However, as of the taping here, of the spinning back click, Khabib Nurmagomedov most likely will not be taking part. So what does that leave us? It leaves us with Tony Ferguson. We can sub in and have someone fight Tony Ferguson in the main event, or we can go in another direction and just provide another main event. Goze, what do you want to see? But let me give you up to date of what's going on, Goze, because these stories just keep refreshing on MMAJunkie.com. Dustin Poirier says he'll fight Tony Ferguson. George Masvidal was not as specific, but he says super necessary that I fight on this card. Remember, he's a welterweight. And, of course, Covington and Woodley are trading barbs back and forth. So I guess you could pull Ferguson if you're not going to use him and use those two as the main event. You got Ngannou and Rosenstruck. What do you do? There's all kinds of possibilities. 2 minutes on the clock for you, Goze.
I think the guy you got to go with is Justin Gaethje. He's the guy who's been wanting to be in this situation. Now, the difference here is normally you have a Justin Gaethje who doesn't like to take fights on short notice. He's very serious about his camps and wanting to be well prepared for fights. But like as I stated earlier, we're in a different era here. And I think with Justin Gaethje having to take this long break waiting for this fight to play out, then on top of it, everything that's happened with coronavirus, I doubt he's going to want to stick around. So he's going to want to take some sort of a fight. In this situation, I think it's the best you can do. So if I'm Justin Gaethje, I'm the guy that's knocking on the door saying, give me the fight. And apparently, I think that's what's going to really happen. After that, really, I think it just comes down to who's the closest to being prepared. There's a lot of names you brought up. What I thought might actually happen is they might take somebody who just fought, somebody like a Dan Hooker or someone that was already preparing, somewhat prepared anyway, because this fight's right around the corner. So I like Justin Gaethje, though.
Yeah, I guess that's a great choice, by the way, Justin Gaethje. He's a killer, but you're right. He does like long camps. Who knows? When I saw Dustin Poirier, I thought, oh, that's a good one. I mean, I can appreciate Masvidal wanted to be a part of it as well, but he kind of didn't have an opponent unless Ferguson moves up to 70. But then again, what does that do? You know what I mean? Who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? But how about the fact that Woodley and Covington are chirping? That fight's got a lot of bad blood. I'd love to see that. Ngannou and Rosenstruck, along with Ferguson and Poirier, Ferguson and Justin Gaethje, if they can pull it off, we got the makings of a great card. And as of right now, to repeat, UFC President Dana White is insisting that UFC 249 will go. So don't hold us to it if anything changes, because a lot of stuff is happening here with UFC 249. Again, one thing we can be sure of is Khabib Nurmagomedov will not be competing, it appears. He is stuck in Russia. No in and out of travel unless you're a diplomat. So that's that. All right, let's go on to the next topic. Goes This past weekend, we had SUG, Submission Underground. All right, that's Chael Sonnen's outfit that he has up in the Northwest. He gets a lot of MMA fighters to compete, some of the top grapplers competing. We got that on the UFC Fight Pass. They took some extreme measures, all right? No fans, no cornerman, one cameraman, and it was just Chael Sonnen calling the action. Look, it was drastic, but it was understandable, and I don't know how long this can be kept up. But do you want to see MMA contested under these same conditions now that you've gotten a taste of it? 2 minutes, Goze.
It's such a tough time because, desperate times call for desperate measures. And I think there are certain fights that just needed to happen. Khabib and Tony was a perfect example. But it's always going to be safety first for the fighters, for the UFC. It has to be. We spent so much time trying to build this reputation that we belong up there with all the other sports, that if we're going to kind of bend the rules a little bit just to make fights happen, that's kind of scary. That would make things collapse very quickly. So safety first, that's very important. The laws that have been put out, I just don't know how we can do it. You need your 3 judges, you need the doctor ringside, you need officials, 1 cameraman. Yeah, I could see that. The announcers in the back versus being in the room, I can see that too. But at the same time, at what cost is all this going to come? Because at the end of the day, don't we all want a true representation of a fight? And do we want guys just jumping off the couch because they can, getting in there, and then what? They don't have their cornermen, they don't have proper training camps. So that's a little difficult to ask, but desperate times call for desperate measures.
But Goze, what if Tony and Khabib were getting into it on the streets, at a hotel lobby, at a club? You telling me people wouldn't gather around? You telling me people wouldn't be, searching MMA Junkie and TMZ to see if anybody's got footage of the fight just to see what went down? Remember, Kimbo, he made a kind of a living, man, off of those type of things. Everybody looked forward to him and Sean Gannon in the gym, and when it was going to go down, it was kind of secretive. I don't know. Maybe the UFC, if they quarantine the fighters and take some extra precautions, maybe they can pull this off. We need some sports, damn it.
I mean, it's something that they could do, definitely, but at what cost? Again, is that a sport? Is that what we've been promoting? It's something different, and people will definitely tune in. But I don't know if it's a true representation of what would actually happen in a fight between the two.
All right. Last topic we've got to discuss here on the Spinning Back Clique. The social distancing guidelines are in effect until April 30th. So that's according to President Donald Trump, who made that announcement yesterday. So we have 1 more month, all right, of these strict guidelines. And right now, everybody's at home with a bunch of extra time. A lot of the fighters are posting stuff on social media. Goze, I'm sure you've observed some of it. And I wanted to ask you, what's the biggest positive that you've taken out of this whole, shelter-in-place era in regards to yourself and the fighters? You got 2 minutes.
Well, in regards to myself, I think it's just don't take anything for granted. This world can change so quickly. You have to prepare. You have to be there for yourself, but also the people around you.
Amen.
Help lift them up and be there for them, because especially here at MMA Junkie, we're all a family and we all try and help each other out. But we all have friends in the media that are at different websites or working for different outlets, and I think we can all just be there for each other. That's what I learned for myself. For the fighters, I think they probably learned that at any moment this can be taken away from them. And I think in a time where people were fighting for their position and rankings and what they deserve and this and that might have to go away, because now it might just have to be one of those where when you get called upon, you got to take that fight and you got to make that money, because being a fighter, you can't live paycheck to paycheck like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Is that Dana, by the way, telling us where UFC 249 is going to take place?
Probably, more than likely.
All right. I got to say, yeah, you're right. Don't take anything for granted. That whole thing of why wait till tomorrow when you can handle it today, man, this is a real wake-up call, and so for me, I've kind of learned to reset my priorities once I'm able to get out of this house and go out there. I can't wait to get back to the Mandalay Bay studio. But look, in observing the fighters, it's kind of cool seeing them take to their social media and connect with the fans. Hopefully they find some of that love, because the early era MMA fans with the early era MMA fighters, I thought they had more of a connection. And then when more money started to get made and you had handlers and managers and agents and PR people, it just seemed like there was a little bit more distance and not that connection, which was pretty special in the sport. And I get it. The athletes are uber popular nowadays, and they get pulled in many directions. So I get it. Times are different, but it's really, really cool to see them out there connecting with fans, and having live chats and things like that, keeping themselves out there doing their part. All right, and as for us, we did our part. We'll be back next week with another spinning back click on MMA Junkie.
Hey sports fans, if you want to see more videos like this, check out some of our other ones right here. And if you like what you see, hit the subscribe button and stick around for more from USA Today Sports.